The Nerdcast Empire is on the air. It is another week of the Hard Rock Empire. I am Matt in the studio. Great to have you along with us. We are closing out 2025, just half a month to go in this year. We've still got a little bit more than that to go in the music of 2025. This week, we'll be talking about the music that was released on November the 21st of 2025. Another good week in music this week, and we'll talk more about that in our second segment of the podcast. Of course, we have news headlines, and of course, we have the Vault, where we'll talk about a couple of classic albums, and our question of the week, our final week of Christmas-related questions coming up this week on the Power Trio. Joining me in studio, as always, is Mike. Mike, how's it going?
It's going. Ever since I switched over to kind of pre-curating my list, I feel like each week has had more and more good music. Like, I don't know if it's just because I'm only really focusing on what I enjoy or what, but man, it seems like there's a lot to go through of high-quality stuff lately.
I do wonder, like, if going through all the not-so-good music every week was burning you out from the good music. Like, it's
Possibly.
just, now that you're really only looking at the best of the best every week, I don't know if it's just spotlighting it out more or what it is, but that's an interesting thought that it has been several weeks now since you've kind of pared down the list that the lists have been really good each and every week. So hopefully that continues through the end of the year. Probably will start to slow up. That's one of the things that I certainly want to mention as we get to the end here is that some of our lists will start getting a lot smaller as we get to the end of the year. So don't be surprised if we don't start combining some weeks together, especially as we get to the end of the year, because as we learned from last year, it just doesn't last. Eventually, it will just nobody's releasing music at the end of the year. So it's just one of those things that we kind of have to be cognizant of as we move forward toward the end of the year. But still some good stuff and still a really good, solid list this week, and we'll get to that in our second segment. But in our first segment, we're talking all things news headlines, and I was a little surprised by this headline. Not surprised necessarily of the news that's actually here, but actually surprised at how long it had been since this band had toured. The news from Blabbermouth that Triumph, one of Canada's most revered and influential rock bands, has announced its first tour in 30 years with Triumph's 50th anniversary tour produced by Live Nation. It'll be a North American tour. Dates so far announced, obviously, as you would expect, quite a few dates in Canada. It picks up the U.S. leg on May 13th in Rosemont at the Rosemont Theater in Chicago and carries through June 6th in Boston. We'll see, obviously, whether there are extra dates added to that, depending, obviously, on how tickets sell for the event. But, Triumph is maybe one of the more underrated rock bands of maybe ever, honestly, overshadowed by some other big Canadian acts. I think, and Chris mentioned in the chat, welcome Chris to the chat, it doesn't necessarily say that it's a retirement tour, but obviously when you haven't toured in 30 years, every tour could be a retirement tour. But Mike, going to kind of get your thoughts on these guys.
Yeah, kind of the vibe I got from the article, and they were talking to Rick Emmett in the article about it. It kind of sounds like, as far as the core three original members, this might kind of be the last chapter. That he mentions that even the two that are healthy aren't really up for night in, night out touring, and they've been around a long time.
Yeah.
And they kind of mentioned that Brent Fitz, Phil X, and Todd Kearns might be doing a lot of the heavy lifting as far as the music goes. And I even heard Eddie Trunk the other day make some comment about that. But still be a really cool tour either way.
Yeah, for sure. And they obviously have some big hit songs from their time, and it feels like a band. I'm really shocked it's been 30 years. I think that's the biggest takeaway, is that I'm not surprised that maybe they haven't toured as much lately, as you mentioned. Certainly health issues, really with all three of the original members to some degree, have kind of kept them off the road. But it is great to see that, however much they're able to actually get out and do it, this could be a great way to kind of say farewell to their fans, get in front of them. And again, if they come out of this tour and things went well and they're feeling up to it, I'm sure you'll still see dates here and there as they, see fit. But, like you said, for the three main members of the band, this could be some of the last times you'll ever get to see them perform together. So if you are a fan of Triumph, if you've been waiting for this, I wouldn't wait long. I'd try to jump on tickets when you can, because again, these could be the last shows that these three decide to do, outside of maybe a one-off here and there.
It makes you wonder too that if tickets sell well for this tour, which I assume they will, if they're feeling up to it, is this something where maybe they'll move into maybe some short-term residencies in places so they're not having to travel as much, but they can set up shop and put on a few shows a week here and there? I don't know.
Yeah, and I'm curious, is there a place in Canada where bands go to set up residencies, or do they still come to the States to do that in Vegas or wherever?
I'm sure there's the equivalent, right?
I would have to think so. I would have to think somewhere relative. I mean, I would think West Coast, where it's warmer most of the year, as opposed to Toronto or Montreal or somewhere like that, where we're getting a taste of that weather right now, which is very unpleasant. I wouldn't imagine living in a place where it's like this more often than not from October till March. So not a place I'd want to do a residency, but Chris, of course, mentioning the wrestling news, all of them having to tap out to Gunther potentially to end. We'll probably talk about that, and it's probably as good a time as any to mention that a week from Tuesday we will be having a special midweek edition of the Nerdcast Empire. We will have our 200th episode. Believe it or not, we're going to be making it to number 200. That may be one of the topics that comes up, is the whole John Cena retirement thing. So if you're interested in chatting about that, I would encourage you to join us for that.
Lots of opinions about that.
Lots of opinions, and many of them wrong. So we'll give you the right opinions on that if you join us. That's your teaser to join us for episode 200. We'll talk about a lot of stuff. And I'll talk more about that episode as well coming up here in a little bit. But yeah, definitely check out Triumph. Again, not specifically going to be labeled a farewell tour, but it very well could be.
Every next tour could be the farewell tour.
For sure.
You never know.
So go see them if you really want to do that, and I'm sure a lot of their fans are just itching to get out there and see them live. One other news story I wanted to mention, and it kind of has to do with Polestar. We've talked about Polestar before. They do a lot of different concert numbers, kind of rating, how well sales go for concerts. And they've released their latest numbers. We're going to talk about that. We do have ads coming up here on Twitch. If you're on Twitch, we'll continue to talk about this topic during the break. But you can check out the article there, and we'll still be talking about it on the other side of the ad break. But we want to go ahead and get that first 90-second ad out of the way before we get to our new music this week. So if you're interested in this story, you can always subscribe to not have the ad break, or hang around and we'll talk more about it on the other side of the break. But for those of you on YouTube, or for those of you who are subscribed to our Twitch channel, we'll continue to talk about this story. And the Blabbermouth piece obviously focuses more on the metal bands, the rock bands that are listed on this list of the top 25 most popular touring artists of the millennium, based on ticket sales from January 1st, 2001 to the end of 2025. Metallica, Bon Jovi, Iron Maiden, Guns N' Roses, all coming in that top 25. As you would expect, a lot of non-metal bands on this list, mostly pop acts, mostly pop rock acts, as you would anticipate. But Mike, as you looked at this story, I know you pointed some things out in our Discord. Good time to remind you to join our Discord. But what really kind of jumped out at you that was maybe surprising or maybe not surprising when you looked at it?
I don't know if surprising is the right word. I guess maybe just verifying what I already kind of suspected, and that's that people in general have really horrible music taste.
Yeah.
I mean, Coldplay, U2, Ed Sheeran, Dave Matthews Band. I mean, I'll even give Taylor Swift a pass, but that top four, what are we doing, man? How could they? I'm sure more shows in some instances, but what are we doing?
If that was your choice, if Coldplay, U2, Ed Sheeran, Dave Matthews Band, if those tickets were all put in front of you and you have to go see one of those four bands in concert, which one of those four would you choose?
U2.
U2.
Yeah.
I would agree with that.
Followed by Dave Matthews Band.
I think
I don't know enough Ed Sheeran, so I don't know if he's worse than Coldplay. I assume probably not. Guessing.
I'd say that's probably a fair order. U2, obviously, for longevity, if nothing else. And they'll have a couple of songs that you wouldn't mind hearing live. And Dave Matthews Band, kind of the same situation. They've got
I respect Dave Matthews Band for their talent. Even
Yeah.
if, they tend to create music I don't like.
Yeah, that is completely fair. But yeah, as you look at kind of to get into the nuts and bolts and welcome back to those who had to sit through an ad break, they were talking about Polestar's list of the top 25 most popular touring acts of the millennium, or touring artists of the millennium. Metallica came in at number 8 with 15.5 million tickets sold at 562 concerts. Bon Jovi, number 9, 13.9 million tickets sold at 587 shows. Guns N' Roses at number 16, 10.7 million tickets at 486 concerts. And Iron Maiden, number 19, with 10 million tickets at 620 shows. So they had the most shows of those four bands. Coldplay was number 1 at 24.8 million tickets, followed by U2 with 20.2 and Ed Sheeran with 19.6 million tickets. The number of shows was interesting. You brought up a really good point in the Discord about some artists who had just an incredible amount of shows considering how long they've been doing this.
Yeah, I mean, given this is all the same time frame, this is all 2001 to now, like, what in the world is Elton John doing playing 1,242 shows compared to, say, Metallica at 562? Like, what is going on there? Dude, like, be retired. You've earned it.
Yeah, and kudos to him, obviously, the fact that he's continued to want to get out there. I mean, that's twice as many shows as Iron Maiden has performed in that same time period. That's incredible to me. And again, more power to him. And if I was a musician and I had enough hits to keep touring, I probably would too, because I would imagine there's nothing like playing live music in front of crowds. And he's probably somebody who will always draw well, regardless of how many times you see. He's one of those repeat artists. You're going to see him 10, 15, 20 times because you just never know when's the last time you're going to get to see him.
Sure. I mean, there are a lot of his contemporaries that have slowly started fading due to various health issues, if not mortality. And, if you can do it, man, keep doing it. I also have to question, obviously the one column is average ticket price. And the average ticket price people are paying to see the Rolling Stones is $162.96, which means a lot of people are paying a lot more than $162 to see the Rolling Stones.
Yeah.
There's no time in the past 25 years where I would have recommended that.
No. The Rolling Stones, of all the big name rock bands over the years, I would probably go see U2 before I see the Rolling Stones.
Yeah.
Like,
I think that's fair.
I've never been a Rolling Stones fan. I just don't like their music. Like, I understand why it's popular. Kudos to them for all they've done over the years. To me, the Rolling Stones are the Bruce Springsteen of rock music.
Yeah.
Like, you're supposed to love them. They're the cool thing. But there are so many acts that are contemporaries of theirs that are so much better, that wrote both more interesting songs and better songs than they did. To me, they're kind of run on parallel tracks, where Springsteen's more kind of like the pop rock track, and the Stones would be more the rock track. But U2, I'd probably see Dave Matthews before I would go see the Rolling Stones. And
you know what? I'm on board with that.
If I had to choose between them and Coldplay, that might be a little more difficult. But I'd probably just not go to either.
I don't know if Rolling Stones would make the bottom 5 out of this list of 25 artists, but it might be fairly close.
Yeah, I have to agree there. And I know some of our listeners will not agree with that, and that's completely fine.
That's the point.
That's the point. Music is subjective. That's why we do this podcast, to spotlight great music, and sometimes we talk about music we don't enjoy.
Great equaling music that we enjoy more than the rest.
Correct.
Great in our terms, not
right.
Objectively great. There's no such thing.
Right, and we're not. And if there were a thing, we're no more qualified to pass judgment like that than anybody else. We're just music fans. So that's why we put it in front of you and let you all make your choices on that front.
We report and you decide.
and certainly decide that it was a good 25 years for rock and metal bands at least, and certainly others as well. But yeah, if you want to check out the full list of 25, you can check out the story from Blabbermouth, because there's a lot of interesting stuff there.
It's probably a little more concerning when they highlight like who had a great past 25 years. It's like you look at those bands they mentioned: Metallica, Bon Jovi, Iron Maiden, and who was the
Guns
other?
N' Roses.
Guns N' Roses. None of those bands started in the past 25 years. They are all very much legacy acts. Like, kind of need some of those bands that started. I mean, even like the new metal bands or like the post-hardcore stuff. Like, why has that never reached that level?
I do wonder if there is something to be said for these bands, or all bands that are pretty established that kind of kept. I mean, Guns N' Roses probably had some time where they weren't touring in that 25 years.
Oh, for
Maiden
sure.
has probably toured pretty consistently. Metallica certainly has. Bon Jovi, I think, certainly has. There could be some of that where maybe some of your new metal bands might have taken a hiatus in the mid 2000s and then came back. I don't know. That's an interesting question
Well,
as to.
you look at, by comparison, Coldplay, Ed Sheeran, Taylor Swift. I assume Kenny Chesney's probably the last 25 years. I think he
Yeah.
probably started early in that time frame. Beyonce. Let's see, Luke Bryan.
Obviously, more popular acts.
Yeah, like there's nothing hard rock and metal that is on that level.
Yeah, and again, that's maybe more of a statement of the fact that those hard rock and metal just can't get that kind of widespread airplay anymore compared to pop acts. They kind of competed alongside pop acts in the 80s and 90s, and maybe not so much anymore. So, but yeah, definitely check out that study. Just some interesting data there. Data's with those sorts of things are always kind of interesting. But don't forget to check out our website, nerdcastempire.com. Let's talk about the upcoming schedule. Because it is a little bit different. Next week, we're going to be moving back 24 hours. We're going to be on Saturday, so that'll be Saturday, December the 20th. It'll be our next edition of the Hard Rock Empire, episode number 96 of the Hard Rock Empire, episode number 199 of the Nerdcast Empire. It'll be the music of November the 28th. That'll be coming up next Saturday, so we will not be with you on Sunday. We'll be with you 24 hours earlier, but we will be back a few days after that. It'll be Tuesday night, and that is December the 23rd, I believe, as I'm doing the math in my head. Yes, that is December the 23rd. We'll be back with a special edition of the Nerdcast Empire. It'll be episode number 200. We have reached 200 episodes, or we will reach 200 episodes, and we'll have a lot of really cool stuff planned. We'll talk about kind of how we got here. We'll talk about all of our topic areas. Some of them we've kind of fallen off on as far as we've cut back on podcasts, but we're hoping to pick those back up in 26. And just other stuff, and we'll talk about maybe people who want to start their own podcast, how you get there, because we've learned a lot over the last almost 2 years of doing this. So that'll be coming up Tuesday, December the 23rd, and then we'll be back at our regular time slot that Sunday for another episode of the Hard Rock Empire. But it is time to get to the new music. This week, as we do each and every week, Mike will put together a YouTube playlist that has songs from new releases for this week, the week in question. In this case, it's November the 21st. And then once he puts all that together, then we both go through that playlist, and we will pick 2 new albums that we want to spotlight on the podcast. And I am currently pasting that playlist into the chat on both sides so that you have that there. Always encourage you to check out the playlist, because we're only picking 4 albums to spotlight, and coming up in 2026, we're actually going to only start spotlighting 2 albums, 1 each, but we'll also be kind of giving honorable mention shout-outs to a lot of other things. So the hope is that we'll kind of spotlight more things, but we'll really kind of focus on just 2 of the albums each and every week to really kind of narrow it down, and also to kind of shrink the podcast into a more listenable length. So one of those things we'll be trying in 2026. But we are ready to get to the new music for this week. But before we get to the ones we pick, obviously there's a lot of other stuff that we're already kind of spotlighting, different collections, big name bands that released albums. Mike, of the other things that are worth kind of shining a light on this week, what do we have?
Yeah, quite a lot this week, actually. We have the newest one from Bloodbound, the Swedish power metal band. It's their 11th studio album, Field of Swords. Danko Jones with a new one, Leo Rising. That's his 12th studio album. He's the Canadian rock band. Good stuff, always classic. Electric Boys have a new EP, Shady Side of Town. They're a Swedish funk metal band. It's been around forever. I actually highlighted one of their albums on the Vault when I was doing the glam metal stuff. Check that out. And finally, as far as the new stuff goes, Stryper with a Christmas album, The Greatest Gift of All. Obviously, Christian metal legends. What else can you say about those guys?
Certainly not surprising to see them release a Christmas album, kind of right up their alley there. But yeah, and honestly, all the stuff you mentioned, the playlist tracks for all those things were really good. So I definitely encourage you to check those out. I'm not as familiar with Danko Jones as I probably should be, but I thought that was a really strong track. So.
Yeah, I haven't kept up with him as much as I should have, but if you're looking to check him out, the Below the Belt album, tremendous. I've mentioned on the podcast before, they have some music videos for 3 of the songs on that album that kind of play out like a concept album kind of thing, but really cool stuff. Going into the re-releases and box sets, we have a new best of the band Creed. Less tracks than the prior greatest hits of theirs, so I thought that was a little odd that a couple tracks dropped off, but, you know, for like 3 albums, very classic stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
Got a live one from Def Leppard, Diamond Star Halos, live from Sheffield. They're, again, another one of those bands that's still out there doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much, for the most part, original band members, too, or at least classic band members. Then we got the Kiss Alive 50th Anniversary Edition. Man, there's a lot to this.
I'm not shocked. I mean, Kiss, if they are consistent for one thing, they are never going to miss an opportunity to sell you something.
Well, it's funny because when I pulled it up on their shop, I saw the price and I was like, oh, you got to be kidding me. It is selling for $287.
Ooh.
That being said, I started listing out what's included, and I got tired of typing, actually. With that, you get a 4 CD plus Blu-ray audio of Alive. You get tracklist T-shirt. You get, let's see, the way they have it thrown on their website, it's kind of a mess, but you get a press kit featuring a press release, 4 black and white glossy photos, marketing slick sheet, a live tour program, a live back cover fan banner poster, album cover lenticular, T-shirt iron-on, 4 live color glossy photos, Peter Criss drumhead litho, Wildwood concert poster, Cleveland concert mini poster, Cobo Arena concert main floor ticket stub, Wildwood concert ticket stub, Cleveland concert ticket stub, Cobo Arena concert backstage pass, New Year's Eve Nassau backstage pass, 4 double-sided coasters, 4 guitar picks, bumper sticker, and a live die-cut double-sided mobile. Gotham Rock City News Volume 4, newspaper track-by-track interview with Eddie Kramer of nearly all tracks appearing on the collection. And it also mentioned somewhere there was like a 100-page hardcover book featuring interviews and whatnot as well. So, yeah, you know, it's expensive, but they're giving you a crap ton of stuff for it.
Yeah, and it's not too surprising. Obviously, Kiss has a reputation, or is notorious, depending on how you want to look at it, being very good at monetizing things. So they strike me as the type of band that over the years has always had a mind towards these type of things where it's like, hey, we should save backstage passes or we should save ticket stubs, knowing that someday we're going to throw all these into some mega collection and people are going to eat it up. And you're right. I mean, 287 is high, but there's no question that's going to sell well.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if there's any fan base that's rabid, it is the Kiss Army. So it's always nice to see these physical releases that include a crap ton of stuff, because I feel like in so many cases we try to de-incentivize buying physical, and you know, if people are willing to pay the money, give them something.
Yeah, I'm 100% agreeing. That's certainly not cheaping out. Anything else on the list this week?
That is it for the list this week. Still quality list.
Yeah, for sure. Really good stuff this week. We're going to go ahead and hit another quick 90-second ad on Twitch before we get to Mike's new music of the week, just to make sure we knock that out. So you won't miss anything. Hang around for the next 90 seconds, and then we will be back with the new music of November the 21st. That'll be coming up. Ad break is in progress, so we can keep rolling. If you're on YouTube, obviously you're not getting any ads there, so welcome. Of course, our stream does stream live on both Twitch and YouTube. YouTube.com/@Nerdcast Empires, where you can find it. And evidently, I've not checked into it yet, but we are supposedly streaming on Shorts on YouTube for the first time tonight. That was an option that was given to me. I have no idea. If you're watching on Shorts, let us know what that experience is like, because I've not really watched any live streams on Shorts. I watch a lot of Shorts, but this is kind of interesting that that's an option.
I didn't realize they were that disconnected from each other, where you could stream separately. Like, I know Shorts exist, but I thought those were just things you uploaded, kind of no different than a full-length video, just, you know, shorter and vertical.
The one thing I'm curious about, and we'll have to do some more research, and I'll have a lot of free time coming up over the next couple of weeks to do that, is whether you can get in and clip shorts off the Shorts stream easier and then upload them as shorts instead of having to basically recreate the short from scratch.
You would think so.
You would think that's part of the reason for doing it. So I don't know. New experience for us. Don't have any idea how it's going to go. Don't know if anybody will watch the short. We'll find out. But YouTube numbers were really great last week. So everybody who watched on YouTube, big thanks. The VOD numbers are doing really well. So we really do appreciate that as we kind of get ready to wrap up 2025 and kind of get things going for 2026. But welcome back on Twitch. If you were watching an ad, we appreciate you sticking around for that. It is time to get to our new music of the week. Mike has listed kind of the everything else that's going on, but of course, each and every week we pick two. And I will say, and this doesn't always happen because Mike marks his tracks and then I go through and mark my tracks. This is one of the first weeks in a while where the tracks that Mike picked were also ones that I had marked as potential choices for me, both of them. So I feel like, this was just a really strong week for the really good stuff that we were kind of in line on this. But let's get to those new picks. Mike, what do you have for us first?
Yeah, so before I get into my first pick, I do kind of want to mention one band that I would have picked, but I just haven't had a chance to finish their album yet. And that is actually a progressive metal band, an instrumental metal band from Dayton, Ohio. They are Crossing the Rubicon, and the album is Knowledge. 26 tracks, I believe it was. Definitely getting your money's worth if you buy the digital version of that. It is kind of cool that they kind of have the main album, and then the later tracks are different versions of those songs, some with lyrics. But anytime you can have progressive metal that also heavily features a saxophone, I think you're doing something right. And, if I had more time to really digest all of it, I would probably be talking more about it, but what I've heard so far is really cool.
Yeah, definitely something different there. Very lengthy album, but that's really cool, and people should definitely check that one out, kind of as a special honorable mention this week.
Yeah, for sure. Moving on to my first pick, though, we are going to France for a power metal band and their fourth full-length album. They are Darktribe, and their album is Forgotten Reveries.
Yeah, as I'll say, really, for both picks, I really dug both of these bands, and what I've heard from these albums so far I think are really, really good. So definitely curious to hear how you've dug into this one.
Yeah, so like I mentioned, it's their fourth full-length album. They started back in 2004. Members of the band include Bruno Caprani on bass, Anthony Agnello on vocals, Loic Manuelo on guitars, and Guillaume Moreto on drums. Their Bandcamp refers to this album as prog metal food for the mind. The write-up underneath that goes on to say, join the French band in this whirlwind of catchy riffs and captivating rhythms. An essential call to arms for all fans of swirling, dynamic, and melodic prog metal. Explore themes of fear, solitude, childhood, the journey of life, family, and the cultural heritage unique to each human being. Yeah, so the music itself is really catchy. It is prog, but it's not so prog that it's inaccessible. I think anyone can get into it. It's one of those things that, and part of the problem with the streaming style of consuming music nowadays is, I listen to the whole album and I feel like I'm really digging it, but when you hear about kind of the themes of the album, you're like, this is one of those things where I want the physical copy so I can sit there with the lyrics in hand, reading as I go along, because I feel like what I'm getting, I'm really enjoying on kind of the surface level, but there's more to it, and I really want to dig further in, but just doing so on YouTube Music, it's not really as conducive to that. But yeah, I think there's still a lot more to get into, and I'm really excited to hear more and kind of get into the songs deeper. Bandcamp also suggests that this band is for fans of Symphony X, Dream Theater, Pain of Salvation, Hawken, and Leprous. Big fan of Symphony X and Dream Theater, so this is right up my alley, and I think for anyone who's into melodic metal, prog or not, I think there's still something here for you. Standout tracks include I Walk Alone, The Fallen World, Sicilian Danza, Eden and Eclipse, Mornings of Fear, and the track that I picked to listen to tonight, From Star to Dust.
Check these guys out. It's Darktribe with their new album, Forgotten Reveries. This is the 7th track off of this album, From Star to Dust. Let's listen to a little bit of that now. Oh, it jumped to the beginning. Let's try that again. I don't know why.
Like, that's not the part where I picked.
I had it queued up. I'm not sure why it decided to jump back, but we will get that reset, and then we will try that again. That seemed kind of odd. So YouTube Music, always going into business for itself. That tends to be the way it works. All right, let's try this again. Again, this is Darktribe with their new album, Forgotten Reveries. This is the 7th track off of this album, From Star to Dust. Let's listen to a little bit of that now. Yeah, these guys, when I was going through the original playlist, these guys, the track that was on there really jumped out at me, and hearing this, it makes you feel the same way. It's just really catchy, but it's not just straight melodic. There's definitely some speed elements underneath. It feels like there's a lot more stuff going on there, like you said, and it really makes me interested to dig into the whole album and kind of get a feel for everything they're trying to do there.
Yeah, there's a lot going on, but it feels cohesive. Like it's not a challenge listening to it, and I think that's important.
Yeah, absolutely. I think sometimes with those types of bands, it's your mileage may vary as far as how much work it is to get into that band, but these guys feel very accessible, and I think because of that, this album's going to do really well. Definitely worth checking out Darktribe, their new album out on November the 21st. As always, Mike has 2 picks. Another really great one here for pick number 2. Mike, what do you got for us?
Yeah, so pick number 2, we are going to a land that has plenty of really good power metal. It is Finland. We are here for a third full-length album from the band Frozen Land. This album is Ice Melter.
Yeah, I'm really excited to listen to this album in full. The track on the playlist of this was really good. It was, if you go find the playlist, it is at the bottom of the playlist, but it's like saving the best for last, having this at the very bottom of the playlist because it was really, really good.
Yeah, about that. I was kind of in a hurry throwing the playlist together, and as I went back to re-listen to the stuff, I was like, wait, where's that song? Turns out I just didn't pull it.
Oh.
I put on my spreadsheet that I did pull it, and I somehow did not.
I thought maybe like the video had gotten taken down and you had to go find another track
I
or
just
something.
Totally omitted it and then re-added it at the end. So
good thing you did because it was great.
Yeah, absolutely. This band was formed in 2017. They consist of Thomas Hervonen on guitars, Tony Maloney on vocals, Alexi Salama on bass, Matthias Rocchio on drums, and Antti Sorsa on keyboards. The press release on this album states, on Ice Melter, Frozen Land pushed into their most aggressive territory to date, fusing unusually brutal steel-edge guitar work with soaring classic power metal vocals and widescreen atmospheres. I don't know what widescreen atmospheres means.
Is it like IMAX or something? Like you feel like you're getting to see it like in a theater and the music's all around you, maybe?
I'm not really sure, but if it's a positive thing, it certainly fits. When I think of classic power metal stuff from kind of the late 90s, early 2000s, when I was discovering the genre, this is kind of the sound that comes up. These guys are a bit heavier than a lot of the power metal acts I'm used to, but the melody's still very much there. There are times that you're reminded of bands like Stratovarius and Gamma Ray when you listen to them. Just maybe a little more of an edge to them, which is never a bad thing. The album's 8 tracks and 36 minutes, so if you're considering checking out these guys, I would start with the track, and it's actually the one that I picked up to play, Chosen, Corrupt, and Cancerous. Give that a listen first. To me, it's kind of the perfect representation of what I think classic power metal sounds like. Standout tracks on the album include The Carrier, Dead End, Ice Melter, Haunted, and the track that I just mentioned, Chosen, Corrupt, and Cancerous.
Check these guys out. It's Frozen Land with their new album, Ice Melter, kind of fitting with all the snow and ice we have outside right now.
We are a frozen land.
We look very much like Finland at the moment. This is the 4th track off of that album, Chosen, Corrupt, and Cancerous. Let's listen to a little bit of that now. Yeah, I think when you talk about classic power metal, that pretty much tees it right up. It feels very much like those bands that you mentioned is not necessarily like any one of those bands, but it just the genre and the feel of it. That track definitely hits the nail right on the head.
Yeah, the second I heard that, you're just taken back to like 2001, and I'm on IRC downloading random European metal I'd never heard of before. It's just such a nostalgic feeling, but man, it's such a great sound.
Yeah, you just can't beat classic power metal, and Frozen Land has absolutely nailed it. So definitely worth checking out their new album out on the 21st of November. I have 2 picks as well this week. We are headed to Great Britain for our first act of mine this week. This is a British glam metal band. This is Midnite City with the new album Bite the Bullet. These guys were formed in 2017. This is their 5th studio album. The band is made up of Rob Wild on vocals and guitar, Miles Meakin on lead guitar, Josh Williams on bass guitar, Ryan Biggs on drums, and Sean Charvet on keyboard. If you like glam metal, this is absolutely going to be right up your alley. From their PR, from the press release, it talks about from super poppy, catchy, and hook-laden party rock to melodic rock monsters to arena-sized power ballads to glam metal anthems laced with attitude and a side order of glam. Bite the Bullet picks up where Platinum Plus selling bands left off in the late 80s. No band on the scene currently pulls it off with more authenticity, conviction, style, or swagger, making the band stand out like a shining light in the sea of imitators. So,
Ouch.
first
Shots
off,
fired.
yeah, absolutely. Just taking shots at all other glam bands that are out there. I think there are 2 things that really stood out about this band. Is number 1, they wrote good songs. And number 2, the songs don't all sound the same. Because I feel like when we get into these modern day glam bands, the 2 issues we have is that it feels like they've written songs like they were back in the 80s and they were very simple and there's just not a whole lot of substance there. And they write a whole album of songs that sound like they could be all part of the same song. The fact that these guys didn't do that, I think, is what makes this album stand out over a lot of the other glam bands that we have talked about or maybe seen come across our playlist over the course of the last 2 years. And I think it's why the album is so good. These guys are on tour currently, and it looks like in Europe or in the UK. So if you get a chance to see them, I saw a lot of reviews saying this was their best album to date. Obviously, this is the first album of theirs I've checked out, but I definitely want to check out their other stuff as well. The track we're going to listen to gives me a little Bon Jovi vibes in the chorus, but really beyond that, there wasn't any one particular band that jumped out at me as a band that clearly they're kind of imitating any kind of sound. They really kind of have their thing all on their own, but it is classic glam metal at its finest in a modern form, I guess. Standout tracks include Worth Fighting For, Lethal Dose of Love, Seeing Is Believing, and the track we are going to listen to, once I get this all set up, is Heaven Is in This Hell. Let me try it again. Heaven in This Hell. Easy for me to read my notes, but we're going to check out Midnite City now with their new album, Bite the Bullet. This is the 4th track off of this album, Heaven in This Hell. Let's listen to a little bit of that now. Yeah, that was Midnite City. Again, just got that great classic glam sound, which I always love coming across in 2025. And there are still bands out there, newer bands they're still trying to recreate that sound. Mike, your thoughts on these guys?
Yeah, definite Bon Jovi, Born to Be My Baby vibes there.
Yeah.
Which it's not the first time in the past few months I've heard something that made me think this is Bon Jovi, which is kind of weird. None of it was Bon Jovi, actually. But, yeah, just catchy hard rock. Like it's not brain surgery. Just write good songs and play them. And these guys definitely seem to have done that.
Yeah, definitely worth checking those guys out if you're a fan of glam metal. Again, these guys still relatively new band, but really knocking out of the park with this 5th album. Definitely check out Midnite City.
So who are the inauthentic bands out there that they're calling out? I have to know now.
What I'm curious is if there's anybody on that same label that they're also taking shots at and they'll turn around. I don't know.
Maybe it's like label wars. It's like,
could be. Maybe
how that works.
That's interesting to see. But obviously with PR, the truth tends to get stretched as we try to. Your job is to sell something. So, but they didn't have to sell these guys. They were great. Definitely check out Midnite City. My first pick for this week. We are on for pick number 2, and for pick number 2, we are headed to Sweden. No surprise, that's a place we go a lot. This is a Swedish melodic rock band. These guys have been around a while. This is Treat with their new album, The Wild Card. It's been a while since I picked a Frontiers band as one of my 2 picks. It's just kind of the way it works out. These guys are a Frontiers band, and they really, really sound good. This is their 10th studio album. They formed in the early 1980s. This is their 5th album since the reunification of their current long-standing lineup, which is made up of Robert Ernlund on vocals, Anders Wickstrom on guitars, Patrick Appelgren on keyboards, Jamie Borger on drums, and Nolly Paulson on bass. These guys came up in the melodic rock scene in the 80s alongside bands like Europe and Pretty Maids. They went on hiatus in 1993, but eventually returned in 2006 as the melodic rock kind of started regaining popularity. From their PR piece, this is some comments from guitarist Anders Wickstrom, who said, "We made this album for us and the fans, and we became better at what we do together with our producer Peter Manson. This is the first album we've made that actually has a story timeline embedded, subtle, but it's still there, starting from the early 80s up until now, and every song stands on its own in a collection of the best songs we could muster." We've talked about it a lot. There are a lot of these bands out there that maybe for whatever reason didn't reach the same level of stardom as other bands that were contemporaries of theirs, but they found a way to keep going and making great music. And these guys have been at it for a long time. If you're a fan of melodic rock, especially Swedish melodic rock, who we've featured that a lot on this podcast, you can't do a whole lot better. These guys sound great. It was fun from beginning to end. Great vocals, great harmonies, great music. Definitely need to know more about this band. Definitely need to go back and check out their previous albums. But Treat, after all these years, still sounds great, and really excited to go back and really learn more about these guys. Standout tracks include 1985, Endeavor, Adam and Evil, and the track we're going to listen to on the podcast is Out with a Bang. So let's check out Treat. This is their new album, The Wild Card. This is the opening track off of that album, Out with a Bang. So let's listen to a little bit of that now. Yeah, if you like melodic rock, you can't go wrong here. And again, excited to go back and check out their back catalog. Mike, your thoughts on Treat?
Yeah, I thought the playlist track was really solid. And I feel like there has to be some sort of documentary potential out of these bands who just kind of go away for a while and then come back. Like what spurred the reuniting and releasing new music, and what, because you think of bands like an Anvil who just kept doing it forever. What makes the other bands decide, hey, we're going to move on to something else? What brings you back? I think it could be an interesting story.
Yeah, for sure. But these guys, great new album. And again, this is their 10th album, so definitely want to check out their back catalog. But definitely check out Treat, my second pick for this week. That takes care of the new music. We got another ad coming up on Twitch. We hope you will stick around for that. Mike and I will chat a little bit more during the 90-second break. You're not going to miss any content. We'll come back on the other side with The Vault, where Mike and I will give you a couple albums you need to check out. But if you are subscribed on Twitch or you're on YouTube, you're going to get to hear us ramble for the next 90 seconds while we let this ad play on Twitch so we can get to the rest of our program. Should be the final ad I believe we'll have to play during this program, and we are underway with that ad. Yeah, you bring up a really good point about some of these bands. It feels like, we talk a lot about kind of lamenting the fact that there aren't music channels to spotlight this type of music, but there is also, we're missing kind of the channels that spotlight documentaries about these type of bands as well. You just don't see it to the same degree, and I feel like, not that we have the means to do that, but I feel like if there was a YouTube channel that had a really strong following where you could create these documentaries, I think they'd be really interesting.
Yeah, and I think there are some out there, but it's usually more like the just person reading about their history. It's not so much we're talking to the band members, people around them, things of that nature.
Yeah.
I would love to see something like Behind the Music that digs a little deeper into some of these bands that they aren't the highest selling bands out there. Like, yeah, Metallica has Behind the Music, great. What about some of the bands we feature? What are their stories? it's kind of that same feeling I have going to like anime conventions. Where
Yeah.
I'm like, what do these people do the rest of their lives? I have no idea. I would love to get more of the backstory, especially. I mean, you could even do it kind of like Sam Dunn does with like the Headbangers Journey stuff. Just base it on subgenre and just talk to the bands. I think that would be cool.
Yeah, I would love to see more of that. Big thanks to Chris for pointing out a couple of Facebook shout outs we've got there. One of those two bands we're going to be talking about in just a few moments, so that's actually really good timing. But we're through with our ad break. We are on to the Vault, where Mike and I will each talk about a classic album you need to check out. And, of course, Mike is running through 2 Vault gimmicks right now. If you were with us last week, and if you're with us again next week, we're going to be talking about some of the bands that will be performing at Sonic Temple coming up in May in Columbus, Ohio. And that's been really educational, finding out not only who some of these bands are, but really what they've been doing in some cases for the last maybe few years. Bands that maybe had popular albums in the early 2000s. Are they still going? Are they still making stuff? So that's been really good.
Yeah.
Every other week, which includes this week, we are taking a trip around the world to bring you rock music, metal music all across the globe, and that is not even a slogan. That is the literal truth. Mike has been everywhere, and he's off to another really interesting destination this week. Mike, what do you have for the Vault?
Yeah, I wasn't really sure what to expect with this one. We've had some difficult countries as far as not a lot of metal, not much of a metal presence there, but this one actually had a decent amount of bands, so I was kind of excited to see what I could get into. And that being said, this week's country is the Philippines.
Yes, I figured we would get some interesting options out of the Philippines. A very
eclectic culture, as
Yeah.
far as influences from outside kind of permeating.
Absolutely. So I kind of figured you would find some metal here that would be pretty interesting. I had no idea you were going to end up being able to go the direction you ended up going here.
Yeah, this is wild. So, like we mentioned before, I go onto Metal Archives, search by country, and that's where I formulate, what metal bands exist in that country. For the Philippines, they had 489 bands listed, of which 380 of them are listed as active. From there, I usually just do some keyword searches on the spreadsheet just to see what kind of genres we're looking at. 194 of those bands would consider themselves some type of death metal, 83 thrash, 14 melodic, 3 speed, and 5 power metal. I've been kind of on a power metal kick this week, so I kind of wanted to go that direction. So in doing so, one of the first bands that stuck out, I noticed had a tag that they were also folk metal. Like, well, that's kind of cool, Here I am going around the world. Like, I would love to hear what kind of cultural influences maybe impacted their music from one country to another. And I didn't end up going with this band simply due to their lack of released music. But the first band I do want to mention is a band called Adamanta. Per Metal Archives, they only have 2 singles since 2018. But what caught my attention was their genre having the folk power metal tag. And, looking into their stuff, first off, I didn't realize that their band name is apparently a Lord of the Rings reference.
Oh, okay.
I'm not great at all these nerd
Pop
references,
yeah.
I suppose. Even though I am admittingly a nerd, I'm just not the right kind, apparently, because there are a couple this week that just totally went beyond me.
Yeah.
That being one of them. They have a video for their song Conquer. You can look it up on YouTube. It's a really cool video, and they definitely put money into it for a band that only has 2 songs, apparently. The song itself kind of goes into Filipino history. There's a group of people called the Visayans that were kind of like the Filipino equivalent of Vikings. They were very pillagey, plundery, conquering type people, and this song is about that. So in a weird way, it kind of sounds like pirate metal, but it's really cool. Their style and outfits reflect that group of people, so it's really well done. They have another track which I only saw a lyric video of, but still kind of the same idea. But definitely a history that I'm not familiar with, not something we studied in school, but something I would like to learn more about. But yeah, I hope they have more music at some point, because I definitely want to get into more of that. Moving on, there was another band that caught my attention because of their name. This band is called Lavos Beckon. Lavos Beckons with an S is a chapter in the Chrono Trigger Super Nintendo game. I believe it's the next to last chapter of the game, like right before you get to the end of it. When you save the game, it shows you kind of like what chapter you're on, and that's where I got that. The second I read it, I'm like, I know that. While I'm not familiar with this reference either, after the Lord of the Rings reference earlier, one of the themes that is listed for this band is Robert Jordan's The Wheel of Time.
I've heard. I feel like progressive bands are almost. They talk about that a
I
lot.
feel like somebody like Amazon or Netflix or someone has done a series based on that. Maybe
It could be.
I don't know for sure. Sounds familiar, but that being said, I checked out their 2012 album. It is a reference to The Wheel of Time. It is called Wars Fought with the Heron Marked Blade.
Yeah, that's definitely a very interesting name and title.
Yeah, absolutely. So going into that, the band consists of Dart Trinidad on bass, Choi Opinion on guitars, lead, Gary Sumalde on vocals and guitars, and Kevin Arnado on drums. I mentioned before I was in a power metal mood, and these guys definitely only furthered that. Really quality musicianship here. Gary's vocals feel at times like Jeff Tate. Not a problem. I'm totally for that. He does a lot of the same kind of higher pitched stuff that early Jeff Tate did a lot of. The music at time feels pretty straightforward thrash metal, not too over the top, not distracting. There are some longer tracks, but none of it ever felt tired or boring as I listened to it. The first track starts off like it could actually be background music to a video game, some kind of role-playing game. Meanwhile, the beginning of track 4 feels like a Tool song before getting into more traditional thrash metal sounds. Standout tracks on the album include The Halting, Tears from Silver Eyes, Bite of the Lichen, The Duel in the Sky, and Mashiara. Kind of wild that obviously I narrowed my search down really severely just looking at the power metal bands, which there weren't many, but I wasn't really expecting to find any because I never am. So it was kind of wild to go to this country and kind of assume there's going to be all brutal death metal type stuff, and finding not only a couple power metal or similar acts, but such interesting ones. One with a Chrono Trigger reference, one talking about Filipino history, like pre-colonial history. So it makes me excited for the next country to see if it could possibly live up to the kind of the cool stuff I found here.
Yeah, well done, Philippines. Really great music there, and certainly interesting to see. Just some interesting bands. I think certainly wouldn't necessarily have expected exactly what you found, but of course you mentioned next country, and that'll be in 2 weeks. So when we return to our normal time slot on December the 28th, that'll be when Mike will be traveling around the world for what it turns out will be his last trip of 2025, and it is time to go once again to the evil random country generator. It has tried to take Mike to some very interesting places. And, of course, the rule about this is there has to actually be metal bands from whatever country it sends Mike to, or we have to find somebody else. So what do we got? Well, I'm going to guess there's no metal bands there.
Yeah.
We'll check this out while he looks this up.
Should have Metal Archives up already just to make sure.
Yeah, because I'm going to guess that, and I could be wrong, but we'll see if this country is represented in the Metal Archives, and if not, we'll spin the wheel again. There are actually 2 metal bands, and they're probably going to be not enjoyable, I'm guessing.
Let's go ahead and pull a backup just in case.
So let's go ahead and say what that country was, but we are going to pull a secondary one because there are only 2 bands in this country.
Yeah, so my first pick was East Timor, youngest country in Southeast Asia, home to diverse culture, stunning beaches, lush landscapes, and rich historical heritage, and 2 metal bands.
2 metal bands in East Timor. So we'll see if Spin 2 is any better.
Okay.
Oh, for certain.
That'll be easy.
No question there will be metal bands in this country. We'll see how many exactly.
3,699.
No problem there. Tell us where, if we can't find a acceptable answer in East Timor, where are we headed in 2 weeks?
We are headed to the oddly narrow country in South America, Chile.
Chile. So a lot of good metal. I probably have featured somebody from Chile on this podcast.
Probably.
If not a band, at least somebody in a band from that country. So, yeah, looking forward to that. One of those 2 coming up in 2 weeks' time. Let's go to my pick for the Vault. Again, we're going through all the Frontiers bands and picking 2 in each letter to spotlight. This one was interesting to me, not a band I'd ever heard of. But the only reason that they stood out to me was that if you go to Frontiers' website or their Wikipedia page, it mentions that this band was the first band to ever have an album released by Frontiers Records. So I figured since we're talking about Frontiers so extensively, it's probably good to spotlight this band, one I had never heard of, but glad I did check these guys out. This is an English melodic hard rock band. The band is Ten, and this is the album Gothica that we're going to be talking about this week. This band was formed in 1995. They've released 16 studio albums, 6 compilation albums, 5 EPs, and a double live album. It is the double live album, Never Say Goodbye, that was released in 1998. That was the first ever release from a new record label, Frontiers Records. These guys returned to Frontiers Records in 2016 and have released 4 more albums since then with the label. Today we're going to be talking about the first album they released after returning. It's 2017's Gothica. This band is made up of Gary Hughes on vocals, guitars, and backing vocals, Dan Rossagana on lead guitars, Steve Grockett on lead guitars, John Hallowell on rhythm guitars, Daryl Treese Birch on keyboards and programming, Steve McKenna on bass guitar, and Max Yates on drums and percussion. Hughes handled the production while our good friend Dennis Ward did all the mixing and mastering of this. You mentioned kind of some nerdy topics with your vault pick. There are 4 songs off of this album that had references to historical works of fiction. The lyrics of the track Jekyll and Hyde, as you would expect, are based on Robert Louis Stevenson's Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde from 1886. The lyrics of the track Travelers are inspired by H.G. Wells' The Time Machine, 1895. The lyrics of the track A Man for All Seasons are based on Robert Bolt's A Man for All Seasons, 1966. And finally, the lyrics of the track Wild King of Winter are based on George R.R. Martin's A Song of Ice and Fire series, easy for me to say. So clearly some literary influences pulled for this album. The album did well. It reached number 11 on the UK rock album chart back in 2017. It's a really solid melodic rock album from these guys who I never would have checked out, honestly, had they not been the first band to have an album released by Frontiers, which made for a really interesting pick. Standout tracks on this album include The Grail, Jekyll and Hyde, Travelers, and Paragon. If you like melodic rock, no surprise, almost fitting in some ways that these guys were the first first band to be spotlighted by Frontiers, because this feels like a Frontiers band. So it's definitely worth checking out. Just kind of an interesting note that these guys are the first ones. So they kind of got things rolling for Frontiers. And again, they left. They only really released this double live, and then they remained with another label, and then eventually came back. So next 2 weeks, we talk about the letter U. Works out well because there are only 2 U bands that have had albums released by Frontiers. We'll be going with a very familiar one next week, Uriah Heep. Some of their new stuff has been released by Frontiers, so we'll be checking that out when we come back to the vault next week. So it is time to get to our question of the week. It is the hard rock hat trick known as the Power Trio, and we are spending our final week on Christmas songs this week. We are talking about the top 3 Christmas songs that should be covered by metal bands, naming the band and the song. It's, I was just trying to come up with some easy ideas for this question of the week. So we spent 3 weeks on Christmas, and really there's no wrong answers here. In fact, you can get as probably as silly as you want to get with some of these picks.
That's the goal, right?
Right. You want something interesting. So did we get anything from Shane this week?
We did not this week.
Okay, we'll see if we get Shane back with our question for next week. But Mike, what did you have for your picks?
Yeah, so for my picks, first off, there's a YouTube channel, Bill McClintock. He's the guy that does the mashups of different songs that are not remotely related or sound alike. But it gave me inspiration for my first pick. I would love to hear Slayer do Last Christmas by Wham.
I do like that.
Yeah, so his YouTube channel has a mashup of Slayer South of Heaven and Wham's Last Christmas, called Slam South of Christmas. It's incredible. Everyone should go check it out. It even randomly includes Du Hast by Rammstein thrown in there in the middle, but just a really cool mashup of great songs. But it made me kind of want a version of Last Christmas just by Slayer.
Yeah, you know what? You couldn't go wrong. I was going to pick Slayer as an option too, just because there are very few bands that are big and popular that are more the opposite of what you think of when you
Yeah.
think of Christmas. So I think that makes for a really good choice.
You just want an interesting sound, I think.
Yeah.
And that's where you get it. For my second pick, to my knowledge, I don't think Megadeth's really done much of a Christmas anything. So I'd kind of like to hear Megadeth do Deck the Halls or Little Drummer Boy.
I can see that.
And part of that's just because the way those songs are structured, I think it fits really well with kind of that Symphony of Destruction, Sweating Bullets, kind of down to Extinction era Megadeth, where it's just like choppy verses with riffs in between it. I think it would work really well. And,
Yeah.
Little Drummer Boy might be the less likely, just because I'm afraid he would end up turning it into some song making fun of Lars Ulrich. But either way, I think it'd be fine.
Yeah, that would be really interesting. It does make me think, though, and this probably wouldn't be a power trio as much as just a general question. Like, can you come up with a band that you would want to see make a Christmas album in the same vein that Twisted Sister made a Christmas album, where they make all the songs sound like their songs instead of the originals? Like, I feel like, Megadeth is a band that I feel like that would work for if you just made them all sound like Megadeth songs.
Oh, yeah.
So,
And I think that's the way to do it, That way your fans aren't turned off because you're doing Christmas music, because it still just sounds like your songs.
Yeah.
I think it's a great idea. And number 3, I couldn't think of, like, another just obvious band I wanted to hear do a Christmas song. So I thought, let's just redo one that wasn't a band, but a giant collaborative effort. And I think it's time that we get a bunch of metal acts, hard rock acts together, and do another Band-Aid or Hearing Aid and record a new version of Do They Know It's Christmas?
to just various bands doing it.
I kind of plotted out some possible themes you might want to go with. You could go kind of the big four and other classic American metal bands. You get members of Metallica, Megadeth, Anthrax, Slayer, Testament, Exodus, Overkill. Get them together and do it. You could go kind of the Sunset Strip route and do members of Motley Crue, Poison, Rat, Guns N' Roses. You could even go kind of the European power metal route and have Helloween, Ed Guy, Sonata Arctica, bands of that Stradivarius.
Yeah.
A lot of different angles you could take, but I think it's time we get, because I feel like every time they redo that song, it gets worse. So we have to do something to improve upon it. Or we could even do kind of what they did with the Hearing Aid thing, and they had that song We're Stars, which had a bunch of like 80s metal people. We could maybe do something like that, but something needs to be done.
Yeah, I'm down for that. I also have chosen, as we get to my picks, Do They Know It's Christmas? But I want to know how fast we can play that song. So we're going to have Bad Religion cover Do They Know It's Christmas. I want to see if we can get that down to a 2.5-minute song. If you've listened to the Bad Religion Christmas album, you know the answer is yes.
Yeah.
But I just thought that is so, like, everybody who's covered it, regardless of how good or bad it is, generally have done it in the same style as the original.
Yeah.
This would be obviously not that.
This would be a Bad Religion song.
It'd just be a Bad Religion song. I want to hear that. That's my first choice.
I think that would work. I'm hearing it right now, and like Greg Graffin's voice on those lyrics, and it sounds absurd, but I like it.
I just want to hear that. Can we get an AI to make that happen? I don't know. Obviously picked a couple other big classic Christmas songs. Would be remiss if we didn't have somebody cover Little Drummer Boy, Peace on Earth. Obviously,
It's really bigger than the holiday.
It is, and obviously, I don't know if anybody can do it as a cover as well as Will Ferrell and John C. Reilly did it as their version. But I picked the band Extreme to cover it. I think you've got two singers there who can give you that 2-part harmony that's involved in that song that I think would do it justice, but give it kind of a metal twist on it. So I would kind of like to hear Extreme cover that song.
Yeah, I think that would work as well.
Just trying to find a metal band that has your two frontmen, basically, I think, really kind of ties that in. And, had to throw Christmas Eve Sarajevo 1224 in there. One of the best progressive Christmas songs of all time by Trans-Siberian Orchestra. So why not have another progressive legend in Rush cover Christmas Eve Sarajevo 1224, obviously with original lineup. Now, obviously, they don't have the instrumentation that Trans-Siberian Orchestra does, but I would almost be more interested to hear it because of the limitations in instrumentation that you would have with Rush, just being a 3-piece band.
I just imagine it sounding like using the keyboards from Subdivisions or
Yes.
Tom Sawyer, only it's Christmas Eve Sarajevo. Like,
Yeah.
that would be so ridiculous. But yeah, I was close to picking that too. Maybe having like a Dream Theater do it.
Yeah,
but
that's also a very viable option.
yeah, I would love to hear Rush obviously being a 3-piece, like what that would actually turn out to be. I'm sure it'd be amazing, but different, I hope.
Really, so I ended up basically with one that it's like I want a kind of an authentic experience with Extreme covering Little Drummer Boy
Yeah.
Peace on Earth, and the other two kind of okay, let's see what you guys can do because I'm expecting this to be different than the original.
I was contemplating trying to get some metal band to either redo the Mariah Carey song or the Paul McCartney song. But
Yes.
I just don't know if there's any saving the Paul McCartney song.
To me, if you're going to have somebody cover the Paul McCartney song, it has to be a punk band. To me, that's a punk song.
Yeah.
Because if you hear it and you think of the Ramones or you think of, somebody like that covering that song.
It's such a simple structure.
It is.
Like, it's very, yeah.
And I would argue that it had been a punk song originally, it might actually be more fondly thought of than it is now.
Yeah, because you can't hear it and not think some sort of weird cash grab instead.
Like, you have to do this song. We need a Christmas song by 4 o'clock this afternoon. All right, say no more.
Yeah.
And he wrote that song. But I think if it's as a punk song, I think it works.
Like 12-key Casio keyboard. See what you can put together.
Yeah, it's not great. I thought about doing one more with like the worst Christmas songs, but we're gonna pivot away from that next week.
That's fair.
That is gonna wrap things up on this edition of the Hard Rock Empire. So glad you joined us really quickly. Next week, Saturday, we'll be with you on Saturday, 7 o'clock Eastern Time for another episode of the Hard Rock Empire, the music of November the 28th coming up next week. And then we'll be back on that Tuesday, the 23rd, with our 200th episode of the Nerdcast Empire. Join us for that. Big thanks to Chris for joining us in the chat. Big thanks to Mike for all of his hard work on this podcast. A big thanks to Stove Leg Media for their continued support of our podcast. And a big thanks to you whenever and wherever you listen to our podcast. We will talk to you again on Saturday night for another episode of the Hard Rock Empire. Until then, don't forget to join the Empire, the Nerdcast Empire. I had one more.